toward the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the messenger, the spirit of guidance. Welcome everyone to the class on divine names. I'm here with Zumarud and Omid. My name is Naima. And again, want to warmly welcome all of you from the heart. Last class, we worked with several divine names. Ya Qafid, Ya Rafi, Ya Muiz, Ya Mudil, Ya Samir. And this time we'll be working with Ya Basir, Ya Hakam, Ya Adil, and Ya Latif. Let's see where these beautiful divine names open us up to. These portals of meaningfulness and realization. We will start with Ya Basir this time. And last time, as you know, we worked with Ya Samir, which was all hearing, which is all hearing. And these two are often paired together. Basir being the all-seeing. Other meanings are all comprehending, all noticing, eternal seeing. The qualities of wisdom, perception, insightfulness. It's seeing in totality as well as every single detail. It's seeing the visible and the invisible, the possible and the impossible, the manifest and the unmanifest. The seer is the eye of the heart. It is divine seeing, which is complete in understanding and realization. A Murshid said, "Why do I have two eyes, if not to behold thy glorious vision?" These eyes are tremendous organs, which allows us to see. The sense of sight is one which we rely on throughout our lives. Take a moment to acknowledge the many ways you use your eyes to see in gratitude. Ya Basir, the divine name for seeing, includes the vastness of this faculty of seeing. And let's break this down a little bit. Let's unpack it. So, first, of course, is the idea of being able to see the external light. Pir Vilayat speaks about walking in nature and communing with the life around you, seeing the trees and plants and flowers maybe exchanging light through the hands or the glance. Perhaps after an amazing meditation, you've walked out and just seen the enchantment of the world around you. Perhaps you have gazed gently into the eyes of a newborn baby and have been catapulted into the heavens, or moved deeply by the glances of your teacher, of the teacher, the murshid, the peer. Those glances can be so filled with light, spiritual power, compassion, unconditional love, that the murid is transformed and can even be enlightened by that glance, eternally changed. The Sufis speak about getting into the consciousness of the one being and saying, I am the glance through which God sees. A key to this is from the words of Pir Vilayat. The more conscious you are of radiating light, the more light you radiate. Pir Vilayat made a practice of looking into the starry sky. He would sit on top of the roof of his home and share light with the stars. He'd glance at the stars, send his glance of light up to the stars, and then receive that light from the stars. And there was an exchange. And he also learned how to gaze into the sun, not something I would recommend without careful instruction. But the result is a luminous glance which reflects the light of the universe. So let's begin with just simply using our organs of sight to look at the room around you. Notice the colors in your space. What colors do you see? What forms? What shapes? The lines and circles. How do they link to your emotions? Do they bring a calming effect, inspiring, or an energetic effect? Do they evoke an element of earth, water, fire, light, or air, or a combination? Do you have a window in your room that you can look out at? It's often very relaxing to look out a window and to allow your gaze to go further and further. But what do you see out your window? Are there trees and plants? Is there rooftops, buildings? What can you see? Do you see the sky, birds? Are you able to identify the four elements? Maybe there's some leaves that are blowing in the wind. Maybe it is daytime and you see the light around you, or at night, the stars. Can you see the earth outside you? Are you on the ground floor? Is there an element of water that you notice? Is it raining? Take a moment to take this all in. In Murshid's description of meditation, he defined 4 stages: concentration, contemplation, meditation, and realization. And in concentration, we gaze at an object. So, for example, a crystal. We look at that beautiful crystal before us and notice all the details. And then at a certain point, we just allow our gaze to be still at a certain point. And our gaze is gentle. We might work with the breath, exchanging the impression, breathing in the impression of the crystal, and then breathing out, sending our own impression, our own gaze towards the crystal. After a minute, a couple minutes, several minutes of gazing at this crystal, we might close our eyes and see it on the inside, across the screen of our mind, or having a memory of that crystal. And then there are further stages which include seeing the point of view of the crystal. What does the world look like from the crystal's point of view? And this contemplation becomes a communion. One begins to feel a part of that crystal. Perhaps feeling the sense of the light as it shines right through the crystal, clear quartz crystal. The orderliness of the cells. And then perhaps we touch a stage of meditation, of at-one-ment, complete absorption into this being, the being of the crystal. And then further, how that affects our life going forward, what we realize. When we gaze at an object, or even when we gaze at each other, we can look with the eyes that is connected to the heart. When we meet someone that we love, our eyes can communicate that feeling of love. Murshid quotes the story of Layla and Majnun, the 2 beloveds. And at one point, Majnun is asked, Majnun, Layla is not beautiful. Why are you so devoted to Layla? This was asked of Majnun because he had so many, you know the story, had so many difficulties. Layla and Majnun had so many difficulties being able to be together. Their families were not in favor. And after so many difficulties, this friend asked him that, why do you continue to be devoted to Layla? She's not so beautiful. But Majnun said, to see Layla, you must borrow my eyes. So this is that reminder of the connection of the eyes to the heart. Well, let's work now a bit with this wazifa, ya basir. So if you can close your eyes for a moment and just relax, simply focusing on the sound of basir, we'll repeat it together. Ya basir, 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 ya basir. Breathing in, thinking basir, breathing out, thinking basir. So we worked with the manifest aspect of basir, and let's bring the unmanifest a little bit more to the manifest by just opening your eyes now a little bit and gazing unfocused into the light around you in your room. And as you gaze upon the light in your room, imagine being able to breathe in the light through your glance, through your optic nerve to your brain. Then closing your eyes and turning your eyes upward, imagining the light going up towards the crown of the head. And then as you exhale, imagining this light descending down and jutting out through the third eye and the glance. And then repeating this, breathing in the light of the environment into the eyes, into the optic nerve, into the third eye. And then turning the third eye upward, the glance upward, allowing that light to go up through the crown of the head. Do this practice a few more times at your own rate. Now, the next time when you breathe in, hold the breath. And when you hold your breath, it's like you're holding it in the chest and you're not straining. So you're not holding it in your neck. And just hold the breath as long as you feel comfortable. This is when the eyes are turned up. Glancing upward. And then exhaling, allowing the light again to come out through the third eye and the eyes. Now, the next time, instead of opening your eyes, keep your eyes closed and see if you can notice beams of light. The light of your glance, the two lights from each eye, and even the third eye. Three beams of light. And you breathe in those beams of light and again direct them outward toward the crown of the head. It's like you withdraw the light a bit and then turn the light upward. Perhaps as you're gazing up through the crown, you can remember the words of Hildegard de Bingen as she spoke about gates of light, and that as she saw one gate of light, it opened to another gate of light, which opened to another gate of light, on and on until it was seen around the throne of God, throne of the One. Here's the instructions from Pirzia now, slightly different. Breathe in, hold the breath, feel that one is looking at the universal light, which is the cause of the One, the cause of the whole manifestation, out of which have come all the visible forms of this world before our view. Then exhale without releasing the glance. Do 2 more times. On the exhale, the light, like a spotlight of a lighthouse, projects out through the third eye. This is a celestial, compassionate light, communicating light with all beings. Try these instructions now. And a word of Hazrat Inayatiyya Khan. The soul in its manifestation on earth is not at all disconnected to the higher spheres. It lives in all spheres, although it generally is only conscious of one level. Only a veil separates us. The seer's own soul becomes a torch in their hand. It is their own light that illuminates their path. It is just like directing a searchlight into the dark corners which one could not see before. I'd like to now work with two images of light, the crescent moon and the star. And I'd like to use the movements of the zikr. So as one moves from left shoulder to left knee to right shoulder, one's describing a crescent moon. The crescent moon is a symbol which is a Jamal aspect of light. This illuminated symbol is light which is received. It's the lunar light. It is cool and diaphanous, soft. It's being responsive to the light, receptive. It's a beautiful light. This light is open and responsive to the divine presence, to illumination, to the celestial angelic beings of light. So as we work with this crescent moon, we think of all of these aspects of the Jamal light. And then as we bring our head down to the seer, to the center of the chest, we imagine a luminous star right in the center. And it's radiant light, sending out rays in all directions. This is the Jalali light, the expressive, the blazing, the active, the brightly radiant solar light. You might also sense the light of the third eye and physical eyes shining forth as well. So let's try this, this movement. After a while, if you'd like to bring the thought of Ya Basir or just Basir on the breath as you do it, you're welcome to. Let's do this a few times in silence as we think about these symbols of light, the crescent moon and the star. You can attune the breath to this, breathing in with the crescent moon and breathing out with the star. And one more cycle. Lastly, a quote of Pir Vilayat as he spoke about the ability to see something which is there but not obvious. And here is a quote from him. As Ibn Arabi says, all faces are his face. All faces are her face. You could say that the divine face is trying to manifest through your face. It is often the case in meditation on light that the form of a face suddenly appears. This may sound theoretical, but the simple story of the mother who shows her child one of those pictures that contains hidden forms within them illustrates the state of consciousness I'm trying to illustrate. The child looks and looks, unable to pinpoint the shape of a fairy in a tree, when suddenly she sees it, and her whole face lights up with awareness as she exclaims, "Yes, I see the fairy in the tree." In other words, the light of intelligence affects the light of the body and its aura. That is why the two words awakening and illumination are interconnected. There is a direct relationship between the clear light of awareness or illumination and what we call awakening. So I will pass now to dear Omid.
Thank you so much, dear Naima and dear Samurrat. Assalamu alaikum, friends. Peace be unto you and unto us all. We are continuing our journey through these lovely and beautiful names of God. And sometimes by diving into them, we find wisdom and beauty that far surpasses what we might initially think about them. And that was indeed my experience in sitting with these two beautiful names, Al-Hakam and Al-Adl. Sometimes you see them translated as Al-Hakam, the ruler, and Al-Adl, the just. They can sound rather majestic, and they are. But it's one of those instances where the majesty, the Jalal, reveals itself to contain an ocean of Jamal, of beauty and love within it. So let's begin with Al-Hakam, the ruler, the governor, the one with the power of command and judgment. And one of the first things that we see within the Sufi texts is that Al-Hakam is the same as Hakim. Hakim, that word for sage. Sage. You know that many Sufis themselves have the name Hakim as an honorific. Hakim Sanai, for example, the great poet, Sufi poet that Maulana Rumi was so fond of. And healers were known as a Hakim or a Hakima. So this is not only somebody who rules and governs, but someone that can help restore you to that state of felicity, that state of harmony, which is your birthright, indeed. In the context of the Quran Sharif, the word Hakim is used very often for God, 81 times, I believe. And what is interesting is that when used for God, Hakim is almost always linked to these two other names that we have seen, Alim and Aziz. The one who is endowed and imbued with knowledge, and the one who has and grants honor and dignity. So, how beautiful it would be to think that those who would be in charge of governance would be characterized by wisdom and knowledge, and that they are both honorable people and folks who seek to bring out honor and dignity in all, starting with the vulnerable. It wouldn't be such a bad practice to say a prayer for those who are blessed with the responsibility and the privilege of rule to do that. In fact, we see that many Sufis of different traditions have talked about the tragedy that occurs when hukm, when governance takes place without wisdom, without hikmah, and when governance takes place without justice, without adl. So wisdom and justice really can be like the two wings of a bird that have to be balanced in order to have someone be able to govern, whether the entity that is being governed is the human being, the body, our thoughts, our emotions, a household, a community, a nation, or the whole earth. And we have insights from other traditions. If you think about some of the beautiful teachings of someone like Martin Luther King, he puts these two elements in relationship with one another. Power without love, he says, is reckless and abusive. Power without love is reckless and abusive. And love without power is sentimental and anemic. Love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. And justice, adl, at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. This linking of together of justice and love and a beautiful model of governance is also something that we see in the Quran. There's a well-known verse, Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan. God summons us to love and justice. Love and justice. The realization of beauty, that whole dimension of ihsan and justice. So you can almost envision what is being taught about in the Quran as this beautiful metaphor that Pirzia and others use so lovingly of a swing. The swing is love. When love swings out into the public realm, up and up and up, out and out and out, we recognize it as justice. Justice, adl, is ultimately a work of love. You take care of the poor, you feed the hungry, you clothe the naked. You provide not just the house, but a home for the homeless, not as an act of economically distributing the assets, but because it's a work of love. You cannot stand to see people hurting and suffering because you love them. And just as that swing of love swings upward and outward as adl, as justice, it also swings inward, and there we call it tenderness. Tenderness, that the very people who are committed to pursuing adl out in public are also some of the most tender people. We don't have to be hard hearted. That's not the mark of strength necessarily. That linkage of hakam, governance, that is rooted in wisdom, seeks to bring out harmony, and a connection to a justice, adl, that is grounded in love, is exactly how our Sufi sages describe the relationship between al-hakam and al-adl. So we have been talking a lot so far about this wonderful book, Rawhul Arwah, the repose of the spirits, by a 11th century Sufi Sam'ani. And in the chapter that he's writing on Hakam and Adl, the ruler and the just, he goes deep into his discussion of love. And in fact, as you'll see in just a second, so does Pir Murshid Hazrat Inayat Khan. No surprise there, since Murshid, of course, is a continuation of the same path of love. So here's what Sam'ani says. God created all existent beings at the request of power. But God created the human being at the request of love. God created all other beings through his quality, his name, Al-Qadir, the powerful. But he created you, O human, as the friend, through the name, the friend. So it's interesting that when Sam'ani is talking about Al-Hakam, the ruler is not in it simply for the sake of power. The ruler rules through love. Recently watching the new Game of Thrones series, House of Dragons. Lots of talk about rulership and competition for rule and dragons. Not so much a discussion of love. Right? So let's listen to what Murshid has to say about some of the discussion, about how love enters the picture and help us deepen and widen and elevate this notion of God as the judge. So here's Murshid. There's no question of fairness where there is love. Law is beneath love. Law is born of love. The mistake today is that we consider law to be higher than love. We do not see that the divine principle, which is love, stands above law. Man makes of God a judge who is bound by law, who cannot do his will, but has to do according to what is written in his book. God is not justice. Justice is his nature, but love is predominant. It is love and mercy and beauty that are the closest to the nature of God. When that dear medieval Sufi, Sam'ani, is telling a story, he tells the story in that same chapter on Al-Hakam and Al-Adl of a beautiful king, a king who is characterized by the perfection of beauty. And of course, we know that this is an allegory. It reminds us Inna Allah jameel wa yuhibbul jamal. God is beautiful, God is lovely, and God loves beauty. So when the king is described as possessing the perfection of beauty, we know that it's a reference to God. And the king wants to hold a polo match, that regal medieval game. And he's talking to his advisor, and he says, is there anyone here with a burnt heart? You know, the Chishtis of India and Pakistan were called the burnt heart martyrs of love. The ones whose heart is so on fire that it's just burnt with love. And this is what the king asks. Is there anyone here whose heart is so burnt that they can come and play with me and handle this beauty? And his advisor, the minister, the vizier says, there is this one humble dervish. He always stands back because he is so taken by your love. And the king says, well, then I'll go and see him tomorrow. And on the day of the game, the king dresses a little extra beautifully, puts on a little extra perfume. And people say, why are you putting on such nice perfume today, king? And he says, usually I go to hunt for victory. Today, I am hunting hearts. Today, I'm hunting hearts. And so he leads the polo game to where the dervish is standing, and he comes near, and Sam'ani the Sufi recalls that statement of the Prophet when God says, I am with those whose heart is broken for my sake. And the king looks at the dervish in love, and says, Assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you. Could I have the polo ball? And the dervish looks up from his meditation with that gaze of adoration, and before he can return the ball, he offers up his whole soul. He passes away. And Sam'ani says, the king gets down from his horse, holds this martyr of love in his embrace, and repeats that line from the Quran. We are closer to him than the jugular vein. We're closer to him than the beating of his heart. And he says, this one is a martyr, bury him with me, because he is mine. This is how Sam'ani describes the real task of ruling. It is to bring that mission of love out into public, reuniting humanity and God. When we look at how Murshid interprets this tradition, at one time he says, how do we behave when we are most godlike? And how do we behave when we are most distant from God? When we are distant from God, this is what Murshid says. Man is generally very ready to pass judgment without any restraint and to express his opinion instantly. Right? So when we are cut off from God, Al-Hakam, or rather the absence of Al-Hakam, shows up with this judgmental attitude. There's not much wisdom and there's not much honoring. Murshid says, man will not stop to think whether he himself has arrived at the same stage as the one whom he is judging, or whether he has any right to judge him. If, on the other hand, we come to God through the name Al-Hakam, through these beautiful divine names. Then Murshid says, for the Sufi who sees in every form the divine form, in every heart the divine shrine, to judge anyone, whatever be his position, his action, his condition, is altogether against his religion. And in this way, he develops the philosophy which he has first learned intellectually. So, if we may, let us do a very simple practice, calling on these names Ya Hakam and Ya Adil. We'll repeat this 12 times, this pair of names, these two wings that connect to the love of the heart. And as Pirzia always reminds us, remember that these are mantric names. These are providentially intended. There's something about the very sound of these names that is intended by God and by heaven. There is a barakah, a grace in chanting Ya Hakam and Ya Adil that perhaps is not there to the same extent if we chant Ya Ruler, Ya Ruler, Ya Just, Ya Just. We can be meditating on the meaning, but the sound has a barakah. And here's part of that intention. Pay attention to that name, Hakam. There's two H sounds in Arabic. One is just like the English H, but Ha is the sound that you make when you're cleaning your glasses. It comes from the throat. It doesn't have phlegm. It's not the Kh sound. It's just a Ha. And that's the sound of the breath. Hakam. Hakam. So to call on God as the judge and the ruler who is steeped in wisdom, seeking to honor and dignify creation, we begin with the breath. We begin with the Ha, Hakam, and we end with the sound M, Mim, M, and you can only make the sound M by closing the mouth. Hakam. We begin with the name of God and we end with silence. To truly embody the quality of Al-Hakam, silence and humility need to have the last word. We're not pronouncing a sentence. We sit with one another through the silence. Same thing with Adl. Adl starts with that rather difficult Arabic letter, Ain. Ain. And the Ain begins with a glottal stop deep in the throat. And there's that moment of hesitation where before the breath comes out, it pauses. And before we seek to speak of justice or to see ourselves as the embodiment of divine justice, there's the need for that moment of hesitation. Is my judgment really rooted in honoring this person? Have I brought dignity to this situation? Is it connected to wisdom? And if so, then may the breath continue to flow. So let us repeat these beautiful names, if we may. Ya Hakam, Ya Adil, 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 Ya Hakam, Ya Adil. I would love to turn it over to my friend and teacher, Zamarat.
Thank you so much. Greetings, dear friends. I feel blessed to be in the company of beings who are so deeply devoted to the inner path. And I feel it's an exquisite blessing to be in the company of my beloved friends and teachers Naima and Omid, who I feel whose wisdom and deep realization is like an ocean to me, which I get ever more thirsty to drink from. We could well go for a day or a week with each of the names which have been introduced and transmitted to us. And yet we have another very beautiful name to consider, Al-Latif. Al-Latif, the gentle, the subtle. You may know the term Latifa, which we use for subtle center. The gentle, the subtle, the benevolent, the graceful. So you see, it's a very beautiful name. And it is said that all long for the presence of Al-Latif, all long for the Lutf of Allah. Perhaps you can even taste, as Umid was saying, the barakah of this name in the sound. Latif, Latif. So let us invoke this name for a few times just to taste the sound. Ya Latif. Ya Latif. Ya Latif. Ya Latif. Ya Latif. Ya Latif. Can you sense the heart becoming still, at peace? From the Quran Sharif and from literature, we learn that Latif has two aspects. It combines the gentleness, the beauty which comes from love. It combines such an attitude in action with a delicacy of perception and understanding. And so the one who we heard much from and learned much from, and whom Umid quoted before, Sam'ani, says that Latif means knowing, and it also means beautiful doing. Beautiful doing. And I remember Pir Vilayat also mentioned the elegant as a meaning of Al-Latif. He was often speaking of the elegance of the divine intelligence. So let us take a moment and consider this vast universe, all the stars and planets that we can see at night in the sky. Here it's already dark outside and one can see the stars. Imagine sitting beneath the starry sky and being touched by the immensity and beauty. And physicists recognize and also speak of the elegance of the universe. And imagine the benevolence and affection that lies behind the offer that we, earthlings, inhabitants of a tiny, fragile, beautiful pearl in the vast universe, may learn from the divine intelligence that made this universe. And that the one being who is behind it all is ready to share its mysteries with us. And it also informed, it also informed the tiniest creatures on the planet with what they need for their life. Now I turn pages to see you all. In the Quran, it is said that our eyesight does not reach God, cannot grasp God, but God reaches and comprehends all sights, all seeing. And this itself is an intriguing hint as to the way that Al-Latif perceives and knows and acts. We cannot see our own eyes. We cannot see our seeing. But the One is already there in our seeing. When we see with the glance of Basir, as we did. So Ibn Arabi says that Al-Latif is the one who is hidden in his, her own essence. And so he, she cannot be apprehended. And Al-Latif is also hidden in his, her action. And so cannot be witnessed. Because Al-Latif makes her acts of help and beneficence and benevolence, his acts of help and beneficence arrive in a mode that cannot be perceived. We do not see where all the beneficence comes from. And this is why sometimes one may become heedless and forget that there is a source of all of that. And what we see are then only the calamities. So God is hidden in his, her action. Imagine what a love that is. Imagine a giving in which the giver is unseen. Imagine a world in which all act in that way, and in which the highest reward of giving, of helping, of doing good, of acting beautifully is the mere joy of doing so. Is love. So this is a way of fashioning our relationships, which Al-Latif invites us to. Invites us to because it does not only lead to happiness, felicity of those who are gifted by Al-Latif, but also the felicity of the ones who allow Latif to perfume them and act through them. And God is hidden in her essence, says Ibn Arabi. So is there no way to know God? Know God? Is there no way to know God? A verse in the Quran invites us to remember that which is recited to us in our homes from the signs and the divine wisdom. We can do as those close to the Prophet ﷺ and recite and remember that which is recited to us in our homes. That which is recited to us in our home from the ayat, the signs, the verses of the Quran, verses of the scripture in which we recognize the divine word, and from the divine wisdom, from those whose hearing and transmission are pure. At first sight, it seems clear what is meant by home. But sometimes we move and not so far from here, the homes, the houses of the people are being destroyed. Where are we most at home? Isn't there a home which can never be taken from us? That presence who gave us life, who guides us, and in whose loving glance we can become who we are destined to become. We are at home where this one dwells. And the one also has a dwelling place in us. Murshid Hazrat Khan reminds us of that when he says that our heart is the temple of God. This means it is the house where the divine message is recited. Our heart is that home where the message is recited to us. So it is good to remember what is recited in the innermost heart, where the outer self does not reach. Where we hear the voice of our true being. It is where we hear with the divine hearing and see with the divine seeing. We hear the cry of humanity, of human beings, animals, plants, all of creation. Here we see the needs. We know through God's knowing. Here we draw inspiration to act as God acts. We are inspired to help in a way which is God's way. Here we find the presence of Al-Latif. What helps us to build our home there and to become perfumed by Al-Latif. Is to make our inner zikr constant and establish a glorification in the heart which is according to the secret of the heart alone. Free from outer impulses and passions. So in this inner chamber where we are most at home, we listen to and join in the recitation of Al-Latif, the one whose love is so great, and whose Inayya is so all-embracing. That she is completely immersed in it. In thought, intention, action, Ya Latif, 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 Ya Latif. There is this question: is the universe a friendly place? by the grace and by the help of Al-Latif. And our readiness to be pervaded and perfumed by this divine quality. There is a possibility, a very real possibility, that the universe can become an ever more friendly place. May Al-Latif touch all those from within who bear responsibility for the well-being of others. Amen. Let us close with the prayer universelle. And you know that prayer is a safe way to build a beautiful world of beautiful beings in this world and the next. Maybe I can post these words in the chat so that we can all join in the prayer. And then I'll answer the question in the chat. O thou who art the maker, molder, and builder of the universe, build with thine own hands the universelle, our temple for thy divine message of love, harmony, and beauty.